In schools, everyone is told that World War I began with 2 bullets fired in Sarajevo. It is described as an unlucky assassination, a chain of alliances triggered unintentionally, as if no one wanted this war, as if everything suddenly spiraled out of control. But this is a historical fairy tale constructed for children. It ignores the cold, ruthless, and self-interested realities of empires. If you want to know why millions of people died in the trenches and why the map of the Middle East is drawn the way it is today, you must look beyond that assassination. You must glance at a world map from the year 1900 and find the one thing that frightened the British Empire more than any army or navy. This was not a weapon, it was a railway line. This is the story of the Berlin-Baghdad Railway. This railway promised to connect the industrial center of Europe with the energy resources of the Middle East and to bypass Britain's naval dominance over global trade. At the same time, it was the idea of the Ottoman Empire to escape the financial exploitation centered in London and Paris. But this idea, instead of saving the empire, initiated a process that would completely dissolve it. At the beginning of the century, the British Empire was the unconditional ruler of the world. Its power rested on 2 fundamental forces. The first was the Royal Navy, which controlled ocean trade routes. The second was the Suez Canal in Egypt. Suez was the shortest and most vital route to India. India was the jewel of the British Empire, the source of its wealth. Whoever controlled Suez controlled trade between East and West. Even German or Russian merchants were captive to British permission to send their goods to Asia. However, in the very center of Europe, a new voice was rising: Germany. The German Empire, unified in 1871, quickly turned into an industrial giant. Its factories surpassed Britain's, and its science and technology fascinated the world. But Germany had a serious weakness. It had no large colonies. It had no powerful navy. It was dependent on Britain's naval power for global trade. Germany was a giant trapped on land. At the same time, in the southeast stood the Ottoman Empire. Once a superpower, it was now known as the Old Man of Europe. It had lost territory. Its army had fallen behind. But the real disaster was economic. The Ottoman Empire was deeply indebted to British and French banks. It had gone bankrupt in 1881 and had handed over control of its own taxes to foreigners through the Ottoman Public Debt Administration. The money from the salt, tobacco, or silk sold by an Ottoman farmer no longer went to Istanbul, but fell into vaults in London and Paris. Sultan Abdul Hamid II knew that this meant the end of an empire. He had to modernize. Without fast transportation, strong logistics, and centralized control, survival was impossible. But if he sought help from Britain or France, that help would turn into chains. The solution was cooperation with a third power. This was at the exact point that German and Ottoman interests converged. Kaiser Wilhelm believed that a railway stretching from Berlin to Istanbul, then to Baghdad and the Persian Gulf would change the balance of the world. German goods could reach the Indian Ocean without needing British ships. Germany's industrial power could merge with the raw materials of the Middle East. This line would create a trade corridor beyond the reach of the British Navy. For the Ottomans, this was a lifeline. For Britain, it was an existential threat. Deutsche Bank financed the project. German engineers pierced the Taurus Mountains and crossed the deserts. As the rails advanced eastward, alarm bells began to ring in London. Because this was no longer just about trade, it was about oil. At the beginning of the century, the coal age was coming to an end. Navies were switching to oil. Oil was the future of war. Britain had no oil of its own. It was becoming clear that Mesopotamia, modern-day Iraq, possessed vast oil reserves. Moreover, the Germans had secured extensive mineral rights on both sides of the railway line. This meant control over the fuel that would win future wars. Britain would not allow this line to reach the sea. First, diplomacy was deployed. The Sheikh of Kuwait rushed into secret agreements with Britain. The railway's exit to the Persian Gulf was blocked. Then came media and propaganda. The Ottomans were portrayed as barbarians, the Germans as despots. Finally, financial warfare began. London markets tried to suffocate the project, but construction continued nonetheless. By 1914, the railway was nearly completed and finished. World War I exploded in this atmosphere of tension. The Balkans were merely an excuse. The real issue was who would control the economic future of the world. Britain, France, and Russia united to encircle Germany. The Ottoman Empire entered the war on Germany's side, hoping to escape its debts and complete the railway. But the railway was still unfinished. As soon as the war began, Britain landed troops in Basra. The official reasoning was to protect oil facilities. The real objective was to seize the railway route. The Mesopotamian front turned into hell. The Ottoman army was strangled logistically. Because of the missing rail sections in the mountains, German aid was severely delayed. This delay determined the empire's fate. In 1916, Sykes and Picot secretly divided the Middle East. The borders they drew almost exactly overlapped with railway routes and oil regions. Arabs were promised independence, but when the war ended, what they received instead were mandate administrations. The railway was supposed to unite, it was used to divide. The Ottoman Empire collapsed. The debts were not erased, they were loaded onto the newly created states. Oil flowed westward. The region was deliberately fragmented and left weak. And the story did not end here. Today, China's Belt and Road Initiative is the modern version of the Berlin-Baghdad Railway that once terrified Britain. The goal is the same: land trade routes that threaten naval power. The reactions are the same as well: accusations of debt traps, propaganda, and obstruction. The Berlin-Baghdad Railway tells us this: infrastructure was never neutral. A road is never just a road. It is the direction of power. The problems of the Middle East are not about religion, but about geography. These borders were not drawn to build nations, but to cancel a train. That train never arrived, but it is still derailing the world.